what you'd like to
because the data needs to be retrieved with the variables
see
as
some
an
of this.
input. We can recognize a few things. So first of all, we can see that we can click set, which means all the variables are actually optional. None of them is a mandatory input. We can see the tags
Available
that we
from
defined
summer
in the queries. We can see some of them are single values, some of them are ranges. And we can also see that we can have variable variance. So in case you have defined variable variance in your BW system, for example, using Analysis Office or using the BEX Analyzer, you can then actually use these variants in Analytics Cloud as well. For our scenario, for now, we simply click set and we're going to receive all the data. So we have the empty chart where you're going to choose as the first measure our net value. And we're going to choose a dimension. So remember, we grouped our dimensions. So here's all the groupings. So in our case, we can see the customer dimensions, we can see the product dimensions, and we can see time. So let's start by actually choosing one of the product dimensions. So we're going to choose product group, and here's now basically our net value broken down by product group.
Of these objects
So
in the right
we
panel
know
here
now
are
where we can find
seems to
measures.
be quite
We can see our
intuitive
dimensions.
dashboard.
But we can also see now in the chart actually a few
objects
items. It shows in US
ready for
dollars
use,
and
but
euros. So we're looking actually
again,
at a chart
I think
with
that
mixed currencies. The currency information
as long
was
as you have
retrieved
data and
directly from
numbers
BW.
and
So it will show you that some of the items that we see are
cells
euros, some of them are US dollars.
and rows
We
with the
also see
data
the curly brackets, which
in
actually
the
indicates that the data
database.
source does have a variables from
The
BW.
output
And if we click on it, we're actually being
value
brought
and
back to
the
the
visuals
prompting
will
dialog,
be
and we could change the
quite
variable
accurate.
values here.
Otherwise, I don't know.
So currently our chart shows the net value broken down by product group, and we see the text from the product group. So what if we would like to see the IDs? And what about short, medium, or long description text? So we can go on the right-hand side. We take a look at the product group. We can say display as, and we do have the option to choose ID, description, or both. You will notice that actually in Analytics Cloud, you're not being offered to choose a short, medium, or long description, which is what you can do in the BW query. So Analytics Cloud will simply leverage what you configured in the BW query. So if you choose in the BW query that you would like to see the long description, then Analytics Cloud will show the long description. So in this case now, let's take a look at the variables. So we already noticed that we do have the ability to set the variable values per model. So as an example, we can open up the list of countries. We can even search for a specific value. In this case, let's choose United States. We click set. And now we see the net value broken down by product group, and it is being filtered down to the US. We also have the ability to choose the variable values specifically for one chart or for a table. As you can see right now, we can always choose to either use the values that we configured for the complete story, or we could have the ability to actually choose different values for this one particular chart.
The IT education.
We also have a third option. In Analytics Cloud, we do have the notion of what we call story filters. So in this case, I enabled the story filter toolbar, and I can actually add a story filter to the story so that the user, when viewing the story, has the ability to choose different kind of filter values. And here you can see I'm being offered now to choose one of the dimensions from the models, or I have the ability to actually take one of the variables and offer the variable as a story filter. So in that way, the user doesn't have to choose between like a variable or a story filter in terms of what you would like to interact with, but you can now offer the variable in the same way as a story filter. So in my case, I take the variable for the country. And if we, for example, now view our story, you can see it behaves in the same way as a story filter. I'm being offered the list of options. I can remove, for example, US, open up the list, and let's choose Australia as a country, and my data is being updated. So let's go back to our story design. Well, let's take a look at two things. First of all, when you remember in the query, we also had display attributes for our customer. So we want to take a look where we actually can find these display attributes. So I'm going into the design mode. And in this case, let's add a table next to our chart. And you will also notice that the table comes up with how we configured the query. So it shows the elements from the rows and the elements from the columns, how we actually configured it already in our underlying BW
Again,
query.
something here is
So in our case, we wanted
most
to
likely
use dimension
inbuilt.
sold to party. So I'm going to
We
remove
selected
dimension
Australia
country,
and then just
and I'm going to bring in our sold to party.
draw a table
So here we have now
out of
all
it.
the attributes because we did actually add the attributes already in the BW query. What if we hadn't added them? So how can we actually choose which of the attributes is going to be shown? It's very simple. If you go to the sold to party, you open them up here, you find an item called properties. So what you know from BW as a display attributes is being referred to as a property in Analytics Cloud. So here's my list of properties, and I can choose now which of those I would like to actually display as the table. The rule is the same, so the display attributes, in this case the properties, can only be shown together with the dimension. So if you're showing sold to party in the table, you can show the properties, but you can't show the properties without showing sold to party. So now, last but not least, where are we going to find our hierarchies from BW? So we have multiple dimensions.
Functions,
Our product has hierarchies. We have a dimension sales
content.
organization with hierarchies. So how can we actually choose between them? So let's go back to our table. And in this case, I'm removing dimension sold to party. And I'm going to bring in dimension product. So in the same way where we found the properties, we can also find the hierarchies. So you open up the element hierarchy. You always have one by default, which is the flat representation. But you can also choose now any of the hierarchies that you have in BW, regardless if you enabled the hierarchy as part of the BW query or not. You can basically choose the hierarchy in Analytics Cloud. So I'm choosing the product hierarchy 1, clicking set. And here we have now the table with the hierarchy. And we have the same options. We can choose, do we want to see the ID or description? In this case, I want to see the descriptions. Let's resize the column a little bit. And we also have the ability then drill down into the different elements of the hierarchy. So what now if we